In today's video, I'm going to show you a 4D opening box of chocolates acrylic nail art design, and most of the acrylic colors are from Double Dip, just not the background color because I mixed that one myself. But all these colors are super rich and lovely for this, especially the color that's Weekend Warrior that I made the bow out of. One of my absolute favorites. It's so shimmery and gorgeous. I hope you guys love this as much as I do, and I put all the Double Dip information in the description box below, so check that out, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye! So to start this nail, I'm going to begin with an overlay of white and heart-shaped glitter mix that I actually mixed myself. So this particular color isn't Double Dip, but I just love this little glittery mix of clear glitter and these white hearts. I think it is perfect for Valentine's Day. But then I'm going to encase this nail with a layer of clear acrylic to make sure it is nice and strong and protect that glitter in the background, especially those big hearts, because once you would file into them, they would lose their heart shape. So you don't want to mess those up, of course. I'll just apply that over the whole nail, and now I'm going to be filing the nail into shape with my e-file. Make sure it is nice and smooth, and then on a nail form backing using the color Burnt Henna, which is 767, I'm going to be sculpting the base of my little heart box. This is going to be the bottom of the box, and I didn't trace this or do this with a template or anything because we'll make a template from it later. So for this first start beginning heart shape, just sculpt it however your heart desires, and draw it later. So just sculpt this. You can be very thin on your nail form backing. The Double Dip colors create beautiful smooth lines, as you could see. And now using a very long narrow strip of acrylic, we're going to be creating the sides of the box. And this is the same color, the Burnt Henna. And this might sound absolutely ridiculous, but Double Dip's colors are so easy to work with that making this design I don't think would have been possible with the other brands of acrylic that I use, because they just don't hold their shape quite as well. They're not as creamy to use. So for this particular design, it is extra important to use a color that is reliable, such as Double Dip. So we're going to pat that out and then let that just wait it out until it starts to turn matte. And there's a very narrow window of time when it is set up enough that you're not going to mess up the shape by picking it up, but still manipulatable, I don't know, that you can place it around the edge of the box. So pick up that strip of acrylic and then set it down. Start from the middle of the top between the two bumps of the heart and then trace it all the way down, and then just let it hang off the end of the point. And then use a manicure scissors after you have that where it's standing up on end, and you can just cut off the end of the extra acrylic. Take that off to the side, and now we have to repeat for the other side of our box. So set down another long narrow strip of that Burnt Henna color, and then sort of pull it out into that really narrow skinny side of the box shape. Let it set up again until it is turning matte. And if you don't have very much experience with this type of work, this is going to be one of the tougher types of designs to do with it, where you're using acrylic that is partially set, because there's just such a small window of time to do this. And as you can see, accidents happen. Like I just got some stuck to my glove. And when that happens, I now have a gap in my box, which is just fine. It's not a huge deal to have a gap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sculpt another little section of this same color acrylic on the side to fill in that area that I just ruined. So we're going to sculpt a little rectangle for that small spot. Same situation though, it's a hurry up and wait, let it set for a second. And then once it's ready, pick it up and just fill in that gap that you made, or I made, if it happens to happen to you. But now I'm going to thicken up those sides because they are so thin with more of that same Burnt Henna, and just pat them out to make sure that they stay nice and straight. You're trying to make these sides as straight and smooth as possible. And so then add more all the way around the entire box. This is also securing it together and making it so that it isn't so thin and fragile. So pat that out again. Do it and go around the next way. If you want to start out by trying to make a box shape that opens, I would like to refer you to my video where I make the opening gift box, because that one isn't so difficult. There's not the round shapes. That's where this really gets to be a little bit more tricky. That one is just square sides, since it's a square box. And so if you haven't made one of these before, I would probably steer you towards that one first. So just kind of fill in all of those different shapes on the sides. And now I'm going to be using a hand file, and I'm going to gently file them to make sure that they are super straight and smooth on the sides, because we want this box to be as perfect as possible. So just file all the way around. Take your time with it. Don't rush it. You want it to be, you don't want to overfile it, because it's very easy to overfile this where you make it so that it's too thin. Again, since we just thickened it up, you don't need to, take off all that work. I'm going to file the bottom of the box too, just because where I put down those side pieces when I was working with them so quickly, they did kind of go over too far. So if you just file off that little bit of extra and file the top to make sure it's nice and smooth and everything is the same height. Now flip your box over on a piece of paper and I'm going to trace it with a marker. And then after I have that shape traced, I can sculpt it with more of my burnt henna and make the lid of my box. So the reason you trace it now is because that way the lid of your box is going to be the same size and shape as your box was. And I know it may seem like you can just eyeball it, but because of the way hearts are, and, just a little bit different will make it so it doesn't fit on your box very well. If your heart was a little bit wider the first time and then you make one that's slightly more narrow, when you go to put it on top, there's going to be a gap. Or if you make it really big, then you're going to have to do a lot of filing. So if you do make a template from the original one that you made, that you sculpted to make the second one for the lid, it just kind of makes your life easier. And now after you have that made and it's setting up, you can use a narrow bit in your e-file to create little indents on the original box, so the sides of the box that you made. Place a piece of wire with 2 beads down so that that's going to be the start of your hinge. And then using a dotting tool or a little tweezers, you're going to manipulate the wire so that it lays across the top of the edge of the box and the beads are sitting in the indents. And this is undeniably one of the most frustrating things I ever do when it comes to nail art, is getting those little hinges made. But after it's in the right place, glue it down really quick before it falls out. And then after that glue has set up, take some more of the color of acrylic that you're using for the box and apply it to the ends of the wire and to the middle area. That's going to keep it from falling off or breaking. So that's just a little bit of a security measure. And plus it covers up the silver of the wire so that it's not so obvious that the hinge is there. And if you use a color of little glass bead that is similar to the color of your box, so like for me, it's a burgundy color. My little beads are a burgundy. You don't even hardly see them. So then put the tiniest amount of glue on top of the beads and set the box down, and then put the lid on top and hold it in place until the glue dries. And then glue the box to the nail. I glued my box at a slight angle so it wasn't just straight up and down. I thought that made it look just a little bit cuter. But now using the color Weekend Warrior, which is 568, I'm going to be sculpting the ribbon going across the top of my box. This is one of my absolute favorite colors from Double Dip. You guys, if you watch more of my Double Dip videos, you will see that I use that one a lot. It's just like the perfect shimmery girly pink and definitely suitable for Valentine's Day. And I'm not going to sculpt my ribbon going all the way across so it fills in the middle. I actually left a little gap in the middle where my bow is going to cover it up. There's no reason to have to do it all the way across. If it does happen, it's not like it's the end of the world, but I didn't think it was necessary to fill that in if I didn't have to. And now I'm going to be sculpting my bow. So I'm sculpting this again on a nail form backing, and I'm going to use the same color, the Weekend Warrior. And I'm going to sculpt 2 petal shapes that are as close to the same size as possible. And then pat them out with the belly of your brush so that they're fairly thin. And then after you've patted them out, kind of fix up the edges of them again so that they weren't quite so uneven on the sides. Once they start to turn matte, which is, it's kind of a waiting process. It's somewhere between 30 seconds and 2 minutes, depending on your weather conditions, the air temperature, the brand of acrylic you're using, the type of monomer you're using. There's all these different variables, but just kind of learn when to pick it up. And then after it's turned matte, you can slide your brush underneath one side of it and then fold the 2 halves of the bow together, just like so. You can kind of play with them a little bit until the acrylic is no longer pliable. And then after you have it like that, then you can sculpt a tag on a separate nail form backing with some white acrylic. So I'm going to place down a bead of white, pat it out into basically any shape. For this particular one, I'm just going to try to get it as thin as I possibly can, is pretty much what my goal is. And then after it's set there for a second, I'm going to use the tip of my brush to cut out a gift tag shape, which is almost like a house shape. So it's got the square bottom and then a triangle pointy top. Get rid of that extra acrylic off to the side, and you can touch up the sides of your tag a little bit. Glue a piece of string to the back of the tag and then glue the other side of the string to the middle of where your bow is going to be on top of the gift box. And then place down a little bit more glue and set down the sides of your bow. And that bow, if you make them on a nail form backing, they're just so gorgeous and so detailed. I love how dimensional bows can be made that way. And then using a touch more of the Weekend Warrior color, I'm going to be adding the center of the bow going across it just to finish it all off so it looks nice and complete. And you could make it on the side, a little narrow strip of the same color on a nail form backing and then pick it up and tuck it around the bow. And I do it either way, but for this particular one, I decided it would be just fine to sculpt it just directly on the bow. Depending on what style you're going for, it's better to do it separate and then attach it. but now using the color Salted Caramel, 405, and Oreo Cookies, 449, and they're very similar. I'm going to be sculpting my chocolates, but instead of doing just one color for the chocolates, I decided to do two because there's always like a dark chocolate and a milk chocolate in a box of Valentine's Day chocolates, or at least usually there are. So for these two, one of them is more of like an orange brown and one of them is more of a red brown. And then we're going to sculpt them into different shapes like a square, circle, triangle, and a rectangle. Because when you have these boxes of chocolate, the shape and the little design on top mean different flavors. And I personally am always too afraid to try them because I don't know if I'm going to like it. That it's kind of one of those things where Valentine's Day chocolate seems like a scary proposition to me. I'm kind of picky though, so that's probably part of it. But we're going to be sculpting those into our little shapes, and I placed down too many beads at one time and I couldn't get all of them sculpted up, so I ended up removing some of them and starting over on a couple of them with the color Salted Caramel, but that's okay. If you wanted to, you probably should have just done one color at a time, but sometimes I think I'm faster than I am, and that's all right too. It's not like you're wasting a ton of product with these little tiny bits. It's just kind of pressing the sides until they hold their shape. Just like that. And I actually only was able to fit 6 chocolates in my box instead of 8 like I thought I would. So some of these I didn't end up using anyway, but you know, you live and learn. So now I'm going to place a layer of gel sealer inside my box, making sure that I fill in the bottom of the box completely, going all the way around. And then after I have that box filled in, I'm going to place all my chocolates in there. So I'm going to try to alternate between the 2 colors that I'm using, so the Salted Caramel and the Oreo cookies, so that I'm not just using, I only have one of the colors, so it's a nice even mix of them going through just like that, kind of vary it up a little bit. And then after you have them and you're happy with their placement, you're going to go ahead and cure that so that they're held in place. And now I'm going to outline each of them with a black paint because they usually have like either a little wrapper around them or they're in like a plastic base. So for me, I'm going to pretend that they're in little wrappers. And so this black outline is the little wrapper around each one of them. So for that matter, you can do a pretty thick outline. Instead of trying to do super narrow little lines, they can be a little bit chunkier than normal. And then using some gold paint and some brown paint, I'm going to be doing some little details on my chocolates. So like a little circle maybe, or some polka dots, or a little swirly line. And then on the other color, I'm going to do some brown, but that didn't show up quite as well. And it doesn't look like much in the video. It does show up in real life, in person or real life. Sometimes I combine phrases. Anywho, on the tag, you're going to write the recipient. So for me, I wrote "to honey" just to be very generic. But if you wanted to be specific towards a specific person, you could certainly write a name on there if you wanted. And then on the bow with a darker shade of pink paint, I'm going to do just a little bit of details on there and then apply a layer of gel sealer over the background to make sure it is nice and shiny and really show off that glitter background. And then a little bit of some regular top coat. So this is just like a lacquer top coat to the bow and some matte top coat to the tag, and then back to my glossy top coat to the chocolates. So using a regular lacquer top coat is going to be less shiny than gel top coat, so you can get different levels of glossiness. And that is it. I love this design. It is probably my favorite Valentine's Day design I have showed you guys so far, so I hope you guys love it too, and I'll see you next time. Bye!